This video is going to cover helminths, which is the last group of microbes of the microbial world. Like I said, in lab, we usually get out the slides and the microscopes and we go through and you got to know all these characteristics about each little organism. Now, helminths, they mean worms, okay, and they are a big part of, they cause a lot of different, you could call them a disease, more or less a condition. But here are all the things you need to know about each picture: the scientific name, the phylum, the class, the general life cycle common name, if there is one, localization, and I'll go through that in this video, transmission, and type of clinical specimen. But I'm not sure you could call these a disease as much as a condition they can cause. But yeah, they are parasites, obligate, well, not obligate, but so they live at least part of their life cycle inside of an animal host. The very first phylum, and let me look here. What is, okay, well, I'll go through and I might do this as we're going through it, but I like a hierarchy. It, makes my ADD go away. Phylum Nematoda, these are called the roundworms and are unsegmented, cylindrical, and tapered at both ends. And when you see one, you'll be like, yep, like this guy. See how they're tapered? Each end would be tapered. They're kind of smooth, like there's one. See that? There's the tapered ends. All parasitic nematodes have digestive, nervous, and reproductive systems. Not all of them have a digestive system. Tapeworms do not. That's why they have to use the digestive system of a host. Scarce, largest parasitic nematode. These down here are Scarce worms, and they're big. If you're wondering how big that is, I wish I had a ruler there. You're talking, they can get 5 inches long. You don't have to really go to the doctor to diagnose yourself with these. There's one. Those are Scarce worm. Excuse me, Scarce worms. They can, if you're wondering, yes, these affect people. Absolutely, absolutely. And I apologize. I should have had this pulled up. If you just type in, or ascariasis even, look, see, that's a plague. Oh, that's gross. They took that out of somebody. And probably some of these you can, and look, you can see how big they are there. I don't know if you saw, oops, I don't know if you saw that other photo. Here's a intestine that was blocked with these Scarce worms. So yeah, I guess the problem they cause is an intestinal blockage. So they're like, okay, well, first of all, common name, now they actually kind of do have one, that's fine. Our outline has none, I'm not gonna worry about it. So obviously it's not gonna be on your exam. How do you get these? Acquired by ingestion of raw vegetables and properly washed. Always wash things that have dirt on it. Or water contaminated with the parasitic ova. Ova would be like the eggs, basically. In fact, let me do that. Ova's plural. Ovum would be singular, so the eggs. Anyway, yeah, you can drink water that has it, but you want to be careful with dirt. The first couple of inches of topsoil have billions of nematode eggs, so just be careful with those. The life cycle: ingest eggs, penetrate the small intestine into the bloodstream. Now these are crazy. They actually migrate and they're small, okay? They go up in the lungs to the part where the larynx is, and then a person swallows them. So they go down the esophagus. You see the little, the hashtag, social media. Asterisk there, small intestine. Oh, I don't want to do that. But anyway, maybe I'll just bold that thing. There we go. But that's where they localize and develop into adults, mate, lay eggs, legs excreted. That's a cycle. Yeah, and they have adults mating inside of a host. And the eggs come from that. These don't form a cyst like a protozoan does. Light infections may be asymptomatic. A more pronounced infection is characterized by loss of weight, occasional colic, stomach pain, intestinal obstruction, and nervous involvement. But yeah, they get so big they block the intestines. And diagnosis: the parasite is diagnosed by finding eggs or adult worms in feces. And these are kind of, it says demonstration. It's talking about here, these are adults. But these are famous for, during surgery, they come out all exits, no waiting. During surgery. Oh gosh, I'm kind of scared to see what's going to pop up here. Oh my goodness gracious. Maybe I shouldn't have done that. Well, look, you see famous pictures. Oh lordy. Well, this is one. Look, sorry. See the worms coming out? Those are, yeah, that's a famous picture. Oh my gosh. Oh yeah, well that was in the eye. That's terrible. These are other countries, but that child looks like it's got some blood back here. But see, they're coming out. Okay, I've seen that enough. Anyway, so those are Scarce worms. Enterobius vermicularis, smallest parasitic nematode. These are called pinworms. The adults are a couple of millimeters long. Okay, well I got in our PowerPoint. Here's some ascariasis. Here's a pinworm, and if you're wondering next, yes, this is an anus. You see how big the adult worms are. These really just cause itching. They do have some common names. Pinworm or seat worm, that's appropriate. Okay, acquired by ingestion of larvae or ova from contaminated fomites, food, or fingers. So person not washing their hands, touching other things, blah, blah, blah. Ingest the eggs, hatch in the small intestines, develop and mate in the large intestine. So that we have an asterisk here. So that's where they localize. And the large intestine is where it's low acidity, there's food there. And what they do is they move out at night and they lay eggs around the host anus. That's what that is. They're laying eggs around the host anus. And that's, anyway, kids, this is pretty common in kids because daycares, kids don't, and they cause itching. Kids scratch where it itches and they don't always wash their hands. Females release eggs that migrates to the anal area, contamination of fingers, that kind of thing. And it's really crazy. How do you diagnose somebody with that? Well, you take double-sided tape. And it says right there, occasional itching as a female migrates to the anal region, usually at night, and lays eggs with an irritating sticky compound. So diagnosis, here's what an egg looks like, and here's the adult. But common technique is to place Scotch tape over the perianal region. So basically this area, or the perineal, kind of the middle section between the front reproductive parts and the back digestive part. But you place tape there, you pick up the eggs, and you put the eggs under a microscope. Or you can go in there at night when they come out with a flashlight. I'm not sure how you could explain that, but and if your kid was sleeping and they woke up, you could spend years in therapy over that. But what happens is you can look for the adults at night. So they really just cause itching. Demonstration, that's an adult right there. Trichinella Spiralis, this is crazy. Somebody that when I first moved here lived in Mertzen, Texas. They actually got an infection of this. Okay, acquired by eating a properly cooked pork or bear meat. So if you're eating bear, make sure it's cooked all the way, containing these cysts. Consumption of meat containing encysted larvae. Comma. Maybe should be an extra arrow right there. But the larvae exist. They break out of these cysts. They mate. And I mentioned this. These are cysts. I had said eggs. Some of these do actually form a cyst. But deposit eggs within the intestinal mucosa. The eggs are carried to muscles in blood. Hatch, larvae mature, and embed in muscle tissue. This actually hurts, and it can make the eyeballs swell up too. Symptoms, so the majority of persons with trichinosis, which is what this is called, this actually causes, I had mentioned that, this didn't really I forgot about this guy. Do not exhibit overt symptoms, but it can cause swelling of the eyes, and they embed in muscle tissue, so it can cause pain. But Yeah, excessive production of eosinophils. Those are white blood cells that are, by design, they react to parasitic worm infections, so that's why that would be high. So after invasion of muscle tissue, swelling of the eyes, increased production of eosinophils, muscle pain, and difficulty breathing. I mean, they can get in the diaphragm. Leakage from cysts can cause anaphylaxis, which is shock. So this is a muscle. If you've taken anatomy and physiology, this is some skeletal muscle, and that's the little cyst right there. And they don't form a worm in us. They form these cysts like that. So how you diagnose somebody? A muscle biopsy is the main way, really. Showing the embedded parasite plus a skin test is kind of like the old tuberculosis test. They'll inject something under the skin, see what happens. So an immediate type of hypersensitivity reaction to the skin test indicates the presence of the parasite. And Trichinella Spiralis, that's how you diagnose. Well, this is the larvae, whatever, inside of a muscle. So, common name, porkworm. So, and it did say pork. This is Ankylostoma canium. It's called a hookworm. These are creepy. They get underneath skin. If you sleep in areas in the forest or some areas of our country and you don't have something underneath you, they can actually get under the skin. They bury under the skin, so under under the dermis, which is Eggs hatch in soil, penetrate the skin. They travel in the bloodstream to the heart and lungs, ascend up the respiratory tract, and are swallowed. That should be I might put a little arrow there, but mature mate lay eggs in the small intestine, so this is where they localize. Eggs pass in feces. This guy has a hookworm infection in his foot. You can see him underneath the skin. So clinical features: penetration of larvae into skin causes an allergic reaction called a ground itch. This is actually an eruption. Severe infections can cause pneumonitis. They feed on red blood cells, so they can cause anemia that way. So diagnosis: eggs or adult worms and feces are sufficient. So this is what they would look like. This, of course, is the end. If you blow that up, that's their teeth. That's how they latch onto skin. So that's what, there you can kind of see the teeth. But they're just long and skinny. They look like a pinworm. But yeah, they're called hookworms. So, okay, so on our next contestant, sorry, I'm doing this so I don't forget. That's probably good. Well, all right, so different phylum. So these were all nematodes. Let me look. Trichinella, all the way up. Yeah, we're only doing 2 phylum here, yes. Platyhelminthes are tapeworms. I think everybody's heard of these. Just to give you some parts, this end here is called the scolex. Those 2 things are suckers, and these are actually a ring of hooks called a rostrum. If we do the same thing again, in fact, maybe I can get a better picture. And they look really creepy. Yeah, there's one. The picture I have is fine, but look at that. There's the hooks. There are the suckers. They stick to the side of the intestine, and they use that hook to hook into the small intestine. The body's called the strobila. The segment, the entire thing, if it's 9 feet long, that's the strobila. A proglottid would be each segment. And if you don't know much about tapeworms, there they are. See the segments? And that one's blown up a little bigger, and you can actually even see. Now, we're not looking at these under a microscope, but you can blow up these Word docs at least like that. Yeah, see the inside? And what happens at the very end of the tapeworm, and they can get super long, super long. You have a thing called, these are proglottids, each little segment. The ones at the ends are called gravid proglottids, and they're basically bags of eggs, and they are passed in feces from the infected host. So this thing hooks into the small intestine, and it gets all the food that the host is eating. So tapeworms do not have digestive, circulatory, or respiratory systems. They are an obligate parasite because they have to live inside of a host. So most tapeworms attach themselves to the intestinal mucosa of the host and acquire the host food. Taenia pisiformis, which is a dog tapeworm, you can get these ingestion of eggs just in any way, off the ground, water. Be careful what you eat. The life cycle, that's interesting. Oh, I got it. It's super big. My bad. So, hatch in the small intestines. They mature, produce proglottids with the eggs. The eggs and the proglottids pass out with the feces. And usually no symptoms, but if they get big enough, they'll cause a blockage or they'll cause nervous system involvement, because basically you have a second nervous system in the gut area. Diagnosis: gravid proglottids. Bags of eggs. Gravid proglottids, and they're passed with the feces. That's how you diagnose somebody. Okay, now this one, I'm going to do this. Echinococcus granulosus. What a name. The canine tapeworm or hydatiid worm. Well, the reason they're called the hydatiid worm is they don't form a worm in a human being. They form, if you type in hydatiid cyst, oh my goodness. Well, there's, holy cow. If you're wondering, it's an MRI. Here's somebody's spine, and that's, there's one that's better probably. Good grief. Oh, watch out. I want to click on that. Anyway, they make cysts. If they're in an area where there's no organs, they can get really big. So, acquired eggs, drinking water, eating food, or allowing a dog to kiss somebody's face or hands. Okay, if you're wondering where you go, what does that mean? Well, dogs, this is a dog tapeworm. Dogs, dogs will lick their, and then if that dog licks their, and then goes and licks somebody's hands or face, if they have this tapeworm, and you know how tapeworms work now, they're passing the feces, and maybe there's some on the hindquarters of a dog, then that can work their way into a person's mouth. The eggs hatch in the small intestines, and they migrate to the heart, liver, kidneys, brain, major organs. Larvae embed tissue, forming a cyst filled with fluid. And I should put that there. Hydatiid. In fact, I didn't have it anywhere. It's called a hydatiid cyst, and they can get big as a volleyball. Clinical features: surrounding tissue can be damaged. If a cyst ruptures, allergic reaction, anaphylaxis can occur. It's like a form of shock. How you diagnose this? X-ray, scoliosis, and cyst biopsies. There's also a skin test done for that. That's a scolix. Remember, a scolix is this thing. And like I said, this is the cyst, and you can see the hooks. It just doesn't. Human beings do not have what is required for them to continue their life cycle. So they make a cyst. In fact, there's a cyst with several scolices or scolix, like heads of tapeworms. Chemotherapy has little effect. Surgical removal of cysts is a primary method, unless, of course, they're buried in the brain somewhere, of course. So, yeah, and something about cyst there. So, creepy. Sorry, I'm doing this as it goes, so I don't want to forget. I did forget to mention one thing. We are doing phylum. We're basing this on what's called the Linnaeus Scale. It's called Domain Kingdom. Carol Linnaeus, scientist back in the 1800s. Before him, you were either a plant or an animal, which I'm actually good with that. I like simple, but he came up with a scheme of classifying organisms, and it goes from large to small down to species. It's domain, kingdom, phylum, class, order, family, genus, species. When you did your unknown report, you were writing the genus species. This is the class Cestoda here. And that's the tapeworms. Well, the segmented worms are under that class. Here's the other class. Trematodes or flukes. Same thing. I'm going to do this like I'm in class. Flukes. Creepy looking. I know that looks huge. And wow, that's a crazy looking thing. They're big. They're probably, they can get a couple of inches in length, maybe. This one we're covering, Fasciola hepatica, is a liver fluke. So trematodes are flat, broadened, leaf-like organisms. They do not possess head, segmented body. They do possess suckers and excretory, digestive, and respiratory systems, reproductive systems, excuse me. Male and female reproductive organs are contained within one fluke. So self-fertilization. They don't have to have an opposite organism. Or it says, or between different flukes, so I guess they can. So their common name is the liver fluke. Acquired by eating contaminated watercress, plants in lakes, things like that. And sometimes by drinking water. And let me, I know I pointed this out, but this one is called a canine tapeworm or hydroid worm. And the other one was a dog tapeworm up here, as far as common names go. Common name liver fluke. All right, so this one has a crazy life cycle. Eggs released in feces of a host, mature in aquatic environment. They attach to plants. They hatch. Free swimming larvae penetrate a snail host of all things. Live a part of their life cycle inside of a snail. They exit the snail. Attach to aquatic plants. I didn't mean to say it up here. And then if a person were to eat the plants, drink the water, they lodge in the stomach or intestines. They travel to the liver, which is where they would localize. They actually localize in the bile ducts. Mature, produce eggs. The eggs pass in bile ducts to the intestines, and then the eggs pass out in the feces. Without getting into a dissertation, bile is part of gallbladder. The gallbladder stores it, the liver makes it. And there are two little branches that go up into the liver, so the bile can drain down, and they're called the left and right hepatic ducts. They come down to an area called the common bile duct, which leads down to the small intestine. So they're saying that's how the eggs get from the liver down into the intestine, and then would be released in, like the feces of a host. They reside in the bile ducts of hosts, which the bile ducts of hosts, liver, they usually cause enlargement, liver fever, and abdominal pain. So demonstration of eggs and stools or the bile drainage determines the infection. Sorry, it's driving me crazy. So there's Fasciola hepatica right there. That's it. The whole thing. Liver fluke. And like I said, they can get, you can see here, they can get, pretty big. And that's kind of showing, that's showing something going on with the liver. All right, that is it. The only thing I did not do, I kind of stopped with my PowerPoint. So there's some Trichinella Spiralis. Remember, they embeds in muscle tissue. There's a hookworm, Ankylostoma canium. There's a hookworm infection. Platyhelminthes, that's the phylum. So there's a good picture of there's the rostrum, the suckers of the scolex of a tapeworm. Yeah, there are the hooks. There's the body. Remember, it's called the strobula. There are the hydroid worms. Wow. Oh, that's tough. I'm not sure a person could survive that. That's showing a cyst in the brain. Looks like 2, I guess. And then here is the liver flukes. There's a class trematode. And there's a good picture of their life cycle. I did include here, it's showing like cattle It says migrate to the liver, fluke eggs in the feces, it gets in the water supply. There's the snail stage. There they're attaching to vegetation, watercress, aquatic plants, and it's, like I said, all these are cycles. It would start over. Okay, so that is it. And I like to keep these videos short, but and I'm going to add something. I could cut this out. I'm just going to leave it. But there we go. Anyway, here is under the study materials, there is a review for this. So here is the mycology, medical protozoology, protozoa. You see scientific name, phylum, disease, diagnosis, transmission, and then here's the Helminth. So I don't know, it's a good way to keep you organized. But definitely study for this exam. So, all right, that is it. Thanks for joining me.